Amazon founder Jeff Bezos once famously said, "There is no alternative to digital transformation." Except when I dress like this, I feel like I'm digitally untransformed. Visionary companies will carve out a new strategic option for themselves. Those that don't adapt will fail. It's a fact of life. It is a fact of life. I could not find words that would describe the best way of us studying this event, this gathering. Honored guests, online guests, leaders of the Telkom business, colleagues, and leaders of Business Day and related partners. Welcome to the very first Blaze with Telkom conference in partnership with Business Day. I'm your host, Rems Mabote. A special welcome also to our online audiences. I try to stay away from being applauded. In a rapidly changing world, small businesses that fail to embrace digital transformation risk falling behind. And they will fall behind their competitors. It is a fact of life again, who are leveraging technologies or technological tools to reach greater heights in their businesses. Focused on the theme that we have today, digital industry experts will share insights, and I say experts and I mean it because I have met all of them, they are experts. I am officially the only person who knows nothing about digital transformation, which makes my job lighter than their job. I don't have to impress you guys about digital knowledge, right? But they will share with us how to bridge the digital divide, especially among SMEs. They will also show us opportunities and how you can create profitability and efficiencies in your market and in your business. This conference and all its sessions are tailored specifically for SMEs, people like me, because you don't think people who do this are SMEs. We are SMEs. We are the gig, right? And we are eager all the time to embrace the digital revolution and connect with other like-minded trailblazers. We have an exciting, that sounds cliched, right? But it's true. We have an exciting social media competition running this morning. Don't laugh. The word exciting is sometimes forced upon our throats, but this time I mean it's very exciting. If you go into social media, you'll see whether you're with us in person or streaming online, all you need to do, pull out your phones, is to post about the conference on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Instagram using the hashtag Blaze with Telkom Business. You may even get a picture with me. At the end of this morning's event, we'll choose one lucky winner who was the most engaging and active on social media, and they will walk away with an inverter to the value of a whopping 10,000 Rand. I don't know if there's anything we need more than an inverter in this country now. I don't know it, right? So please start working. We have an exciting program planned with some fantastic speakers. So let's get started. To kick off the morning, I'm going to welcome somebody who I've known for a long time and I've been waiting to meet this person. And before I introduced them, they said to me, am I going to have to walk up stage when you call my name? And I said, no, you're going to have to run upstage like Obama did. Please welcome Lunga Siyo, CEO of Telkom Consumer and Small Business, to the stage to present.
Thank you, Rems. Appreciate.
You look more formal when you stand there.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. I wrote some notes, right? Because I literally have 2-3 minutes. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for having me here. I tried avoiding running, right, so that I don't actually trip. And it's a Tuesday morning. So guys, thank you for coming through. I mean, there's just one, maybe a couple of few words that I would really want to share with everyone. The first one really is around, just think about it. An average South African spends around 11 hours on the internet a day. Now, I don't know where people actually find time to sleep, spend time with kids, or maybe some of their hobbies, right? But they do spend a huge amount of time online. And that means actually, somehow we've got to find a way, right, of capturing their attention while they're online, right, without really forcing it upon them. And that's what SMEs actually have to figure out, going forward. I think we've been trying to do that for the past couple of years. Here's another fact. If I look at all large economies across the world, I mean, you can look at European large economies such as Germany, the US, think Japan, China, and some of the Asian tigers. Corporates or large enterprises didn't really drive those economies. It was largely driven by SMEs. And in some countries, SMEs contribute up to 60% of the GDP. So if we really have to get it right in this country, we've got to find ways of supporting SMEs to actually thrive. And one way of doing that is really around how do we actually get them into this economy that is becoming much more digital on a daily basis. So a very warm welcome to all of you guys in this insightful and timely panel discussion on really navigating the digital landscape in South Africa. I think for me, I'm really delighted to actually have this conversation today as we gather and explore some of the alternatives right in this space. I think in the digital age, what we really have to figure out is to, how to actually play in that space and also own our own space as well. I think the landscape is constantly evolving. There's technology for everything, if you really can think about it as well. And I think we really have to find those opportunities to use technology to find ways of innovating, growing, or also even delivering, services to our own customers differently. You get two types of SMEs, those that actually buy the technology and use it as part of increasing or bettering their productivity, right, to deliver a service. And you also find SMEs that are in the digital space that are creating the technology and the tools to enable other SMEs, right? So it's in both ways. Everyone has to find a customer. And I always say to people that I deal with is, if you actually solve for a customer need and use technology to deliver on that need, you'll be successful. If you think by bringing technology, you're solving a customer need, you've got another thing coming. So let's have a good day today, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lunga. They pay the bills. Some more applause, please. Singing for my breakfast right there. Now then, let's get this show started. My next guest, going to be pleased that today, for the very first time, I'm not going to mispronounce her name. She's Managing Executive of Consumer and Business Broadband Solutions at Telkom Business. Her name, never going to get it wrong. I'm so proud of myself, Makgosi, that I know your name now, Makgosi, right? I've said it so many times on the show. I've now memorized it. But most importantly, I've realized how much my future depends on your name, Makgosi. Now, I have been given a very long bio to introduce you, right? Some of it says that you have been in the tech, you've been a tech girl for nearly 2 decades. Technology has always been your passion, and you've gained 20 years of experience in the IT field with a significant amount of time spent in the telco industry. What they did not say is that she's also a soccer mom, Makgosi Mabaso.
Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I probably just want to apologize for my voice. I had flu, and it left me with a sexy voice. My husband is probably the beneficiary, right? Actually, of that. So I really apologize if I'm projecting differently. But more than anything, I'm really excited to be here. I'm honored to come and talk to you about something that I'm really passionate about. And why am I passionate about it? Because I know that the outcome of this is really going to fuel the economy. And considering where we are, a few days ago, I was just reading an article that our economic conditions are probably going to be, as they are for the next, 3 to 4 years. So then this topic becomes quite important. But more than anything else, I'm even super, super excited about the fact that this topic really talks around how it can create opportunities for, SMMEs in our market. So very quickly, I think it's fair to talk about what are those key drivers for the SMMEs to consider as we move forward? So from a telco perspective, one of the things that we always look at is, so what is going to be the future of data? We know that we're going to be in the era of data for a very long time. We're going to stay in this era for so long, right? And for many years, we are able to see through what I'm projecting here that the growth of data is going to be something that's quite significant. However, unfortunately for us as telcos, as much as this trajectory is going to go up, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're probably going to make a lot of revenue. So the pressures of data coming down will probably continue. The second point that we need to look at, I think Lunga already alluded to that, is that South Africa is the first country. I mean, if you look at this graph, we are the only country that spends the most time on the internet, right? We're followed by Brazil. And this stats actually talks about customers who are the average of 16 to about 65. It doesn't include the 3-year-olds, right? We know that the 3-year-olds at home, they spend a lot of time as well in data, between 3 years and around 15 years. So that's the second one. Thirdly, we've got some of the research houses, they've been doing some data analysis. And one of the things they found in Africa is that South Africa is one of those that are getting very quality download speed experience, as well as consistent quality of data connectivity. Now, what that amplifies is the fact that it really talks about the fact that the customers, they are trusting that connectivity is there, right? And once you trust that connectivity is there, you know you're going to be spending a lot of time in gaming, all sorts of things like that. You don't have to worry about whether that connectivity is stable or whether it's going to go down. Forget the load shedding. Okay, this was probably before the load shedding, but that, right? So that's really what it amplifies. What else does it amplify? It also amplifies the fact that in South Africa, I think the latest test that I saw was around about 2020, we have about a smartphone penetration of about 23 million, right? At that time, they were projecting that in 2023, we're probably going to sit at 5 million more, right? So this number, is also going down. It's also going up. But what are we doing when we're spending so much time on the internet? What are we doing? And one of the things that came through is that we spend a lot of time researching on how to do things. So we no longer call friends and moms and pops and say, hey, how do I do this thing? Every time you don't know what to do, you go on the internet, you start researching. What else are we doing? 72% we're finding new ideas and inspiration. 68% is education and studying. About 36% is business network as well as social network. So that's what we use the time, on the internet. However, also one of the things that SMMEs needs to think about is the e-commerce, right? Some of the interesting stats that I've seen is that we are the 42nd largest e-commerce market. That's very high. That's very high, considering globally how many countries are out there. Secondly, we know that in 2025, we are expecting a surge of about 150% of e-commerce. Fourthly, if you look at 23, there was, I think World Wide Works was telling us that we're probably going to see about a growth of about 25% in 2023 just on e-commerce. And then we also see that there's going to be a card penetration of about 8%, when it comes to the card purchases. These numbers are overwhelming. I'm not talking single-digit numbers. I'm talking double-digit numbers. So meaning that if you are an SMME, or even if you are a consumer and you haven't even gotten yourself to actually be active on e-commerce, the train is moving, right? If you're an SMME and you haven't figured out how you're going to be part of this, this whole system, the train is even moving faster, all right? So that's really what that's telling us. However, what is quite surprising is we see that there's a low number of South African businesses that make use of digital tools. You'll see that there's only 32% of SMMEs that are ready for innovation. And then there's about 35% of SMMEs are prepared for some sort of disruption. I'm liking these two because what that says is that the SMMEs are aware. They are aware that there is some transformation that's taking place. They know about it. They know that they need to think about it. They know that as they are thinking about their business going forward, they cannot not think about how the digital transformation is really going to have an impact, in their businesses. And around only 27% use cloud services and 19%, use them quite intermittently. I was quite surprised to know that SMMEs, only about 20% of those in South Africa are actually using e-commerce. That for me was quite surprising. And why it was surprising is because from a user perspective, we use e-commerce. But I'm not seeing that translating into that from an SMME perspective. And I think for me it's really daunting, because as individuals we know what to do. We know that using it will give you those services faster and better. But that translation is not coming through into businesses, and that has to change. And some of the stats here, you can see that in the top 2 graphs, those SMMEs are saying, yeah, well, I used it. Yes, I'm going to use it probably in the next 6 months. I'm so concerned about the bottom 2, because the bottom 2 are saying, I don't plan to use it in the next 12 months. And the other one is like, I don't really know that I'm actually going to use it. And for me, the bottom 2 is a big concern for me, because those are businesses that are actually going to be invalid, actually, in the future. And we can't afford to have SMME businesses that are invalid in this economy. So digital transformation for SMMEs is very key. But why is it key? That's because it really gives the SMME an opportunity to lower their cost. We just cannot afford to have the brick and mortar. It's too expensive. It's too expensive. It's on the margins. That we offer out there. It provides improved efficiencies, increased reach. My favorite one is the fact that you can acquire customers. You just can acquire that customer just sitting in your corner. That's really what it can do for you. It enables innovation, and more than anything else, it gives you the opportunity to access, some resources. But this one is my favorite one. This one is my favorite one. What digital transformation really gives SMMEs is the fact that they lower their barrier to entry. What does that talk about? Is the fact that SMMEs can enter into industries, right? And reset people that have been in those industries for years. That's really what the opportunity is here. And of course, it gives you the opportunity to attract the talent, gain some of productivity as well as efficiency. But let's talk about real life examples, right? And some of them, I'll probably skip some of the trailer as I'm going through that. If I look at the fintech, now fintech, as we all know, banks were the ones that were actually owning it, right? Yeah, arrogant in their own way. They've been in businesses for the last 200 years. Why can't they be arrogant? They know they've been doing this for years, right? High transaction fees for the SMMEs and everyone else. It really took a long time for them to service us. I mean, we've been to those banks, some of us who are, if you were born 79 like me, you've been on the queue for a very long time. And those 95, post-95, you probably don't even remember that there is such, right? So banks, they are big and their systems are complex, those type of things. Services, to really get at services was quite hard. But then what happened with the digital transformation is we then had players like the Ikoka, like the Yokas, who came into the market. And what I like about these companies, they come into the market, they look at the weakness. They look at the weakness of those that have been in the business for a long time. And then what they do is they adopt technology and they reset it, right? Not only do they reset it, they also make sure that they give you transaction fees that are much lower than the other side. Why is it lower? They've got nothing to lose. If on the other side, on the banks, the transaction fee were 10 rand, on this side, they said the transaction fees are 5 rand. It's the money that they never had. It's the money that they never had. Another example in the short-term industry. So obviously, the insurance industry is big. Once again, it's full of people who've been players for years as well, right? They've recorded about 158 billion of gross premiums. What are we seeing? The likes of Pineapple, the likes of Naked Insurance, they're saying, don't even call us. We don't even have shops. We don't even have offices. www. That's how you're going to do business with us. They have been making money. They have been making money without even having to open a shop, right? They use digital transformation to set themselves up. Here's another example, telco, that's our industry. The likes of ourselves, Vodacom, Telkom, MTN, we are big giants in this industry. We were reset by smaller ISPs. They led with digital first, right? You'll never find AfriHost telling you, I've got a shop wherever, nowhere. You're not going to find it. So they led with the digital first. MWeb, similarly, they did the same thing. Today, as I talk to you, they are quite big in terms of their fiber market share, and they are big players in the market. And I know they're very much enabled by the regulatory. In this space, for example, we are probably the only one back then who were selling the DSL services. They came in, as I speak to you today, we have more than 200 ISP players in the market. They come in, how do they do it? They came in, they looked at the market, they looked at specific areas, and they honed onto those areas. They learned them. They ensured that the service is it's an epic service, there wasn't a lot of complexity there. So the beauty about them is when they come in, they leapfrog right to the top. They don't have to come in and define themselves and start creating all these complex processes and systems that we actually have. And there's a lot of examples I can tell you about, guys. I mean, we know about the Uber, right? Again, it's an example. They came in, they looked at the taxi market, they looked at the inconvenience, they looked at the security issues that are in that market, came in, reset. That's all they had to do. Today, as I talk to you, they're a $31 billion company. They employ about 5 million drivers across the globe, right? Fashion, Super Ballast, I think, yeah, Super Ballast. Super Ballast, about 1.7 billion, right? I don't even know who works for Super Ballast. I don't even have a cousin that works there. But I know they make money. Those people, they make a lot of money, Go back to the hospitality, booking.com, right? Airbnb. Those type of people, what did they do? And actually, what I find fun is the fact that those who've been in the market, they end up being part of the system, right? Because if they don't become part of the system, unfortunately, they're not going to have a business tomorrow, right? So, and what do we mean by, digital transformation is not a once-off occurrence. And it's quite important that when SMMEs think about it, and especially if you're an existing SMMEs, we've got ways of how to think about it. You can start by digitizing, really thinking about how do we make sure that you convert some of your, your business to be a lot more, digital type of a thing. And there in your area, if you've got processes that are, the way you collect your data, it's the first thing that you need to do. Secondly, you need to leverage on digital products. That's what you need to think about. And then digital transformation right at the end, that talks about the model itself. Now, that's the highest level that SMMEs need to think about. I always say that if you're a small, medium business and you are entering into this market, here again, you have an opportunity to start right at the top, right? You leapfrog right at the top. There's no need for you to start and actually start the business, in a very manual way. What are the benefits? If you look at digitization, cost efficiencies, very important for the SMMEs. That for you, it's quite important that you stay as lean as possible. Very important, because in economic conditions the way we are today, you just cannot afford to have overheads. You just can't afford to have overheads. If you are looking at digitalization, you've got process automation, you've got enhanced market reach that you need to think about, you've got new product services that you can think about wearing this digitalization. And then from a digital transformation perspective, like I said, there are ways in terms of how you can actually think about how you actually acquire your customers. And that's important because you just cannot afford, to be invalid, tomorrow. Opportunities for SMMEs using digital transformation. Look at these numbers. 22 million in Facebook, 11 million in TikTok, 5.6 million. I mean, TikTok, our kids are always in TikTok. My daughter dances, I don't understand. But anyway, YouTube, 25 million. Instagram, 5.65 million. What has been very interesting about these companies is what they did is when they entered the market, they made sure that they got a lot of customers. These are these numbers. And then when they were done with that and realized that these numbers are quite significant, they then started developing marketplaces on top of that. Now that they have the demand, right, they started creating the supply as well. So that's really how they were, every time, because I think we don't usually, link the two, and it wasn't accidental. When they think about when they bring such, it's because they know at the end of the day, they know how they're actually going to monetize that, with the businesses. So for businesses in South Africa, you cannot not afford to think about how you can be part of a marketplace. You just cannot afford it. Why? Because it gives you access to that reach that we're talking about. In our world, we've got a year platform as well, which then allows you to be part of that marketplace. In others, for example, VodaPay is one, Take a Lot is another one, Amazon.com is going to be here, AliExpress. You just cannot afford not to be part of this marketplace. And if you can, that's okay. But the reality is, you're going to be left behind. Now, every time when we have conversation about SMME, we know that SMMEs struggle with access to funding. They struggle with access to market. They struggle with access to skills. But even in the digital world, it's going to be quite interesting, because when you look at the fintech, the work that's been done on the fintech is that we are starting to see marketplace lenders, whereby they connect the lender and the borrower together. And what's interesting about these marketplaces is they don't want to know where you stay, your addresses, and what's happening in your bank. The stuff that the banks always ask us. They use artificial intelligence to learn more about your business. They look at the market that you serve. They look at some behaviors, data points that they get. Out of that, then they're actually able to give you some funding. And those things happen in a week or so, or even in a few days, in other areas. Access to markets, we spoke about e-commerce, we spoke about marketplaces. And when it comes to access to skill, of course, with the online digital platforms that we have, across the globe, you guys have abundance of platforms that you can use to be able to access some of these skills. So from a partnership perspective with Telkom, we know that this is a very daunting journey for a lot of the SMMEs. Theory makes sense. You kind of understand what it means. You kind of understand what it can do for you, but you don't really know who you need to travel the path with, And from a Telkom business perspective, we are here to come and tell you this is our bread and butter. This is what we do, What makes us successful is to see you successful. That's how we define success, from our end. So with that in mind, I really want to thank you for this opportunity. And before I end, I just want to play this video, but thank you very much for listening to me.
Doing big things, to go from a spaza shop to a wholesaler. Make it from a local pickup to a national carrier. Growing from Sis Jules Wamakeke to Juliet Bakeries and Goods franchise. At Telkom Business, we share that vision. We enable every business to go big, work big, and do big. We have deals and products to suit any business and make it easier to do business big. Do business big with Telkom Business.
Stopped 1 minute and 4 seconds before her time. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. By Telkom Business, guys. We should. They know their business. However, I need to tell you something about Super Ballast. In preparation for today, I thought I should look good. Just to pay respect to everybody here. So I ordered a pair of shoes, actually 2 pairs of sneakers. One arrived wrong color. The other one wrong size. In fact, both wrong size. I mean, you can tell, you know what they say about a men's size. But anyway, but they were good. They actually came the very next day to pick them up. And they paid me back my money the very same day. I was so impressed. I'm not buying from them again. So with that done, and thank you very much, Makgosi Mabaso. Thank you. Wonderful presentation there. We had to start with a bit of beauty before age. So I'm going to be off stage, and we're going to get somebody younger. When I meant age, I didn't mean older. So I'm going to be off stage for a while. I'll be back on the other side of this. Alicia Sekam is our next host. She's going to be hosting a panel of speakers. Without your participation, it's not going to work. She's just a facilitator. You're going to have to participate. I'm going to take a break, and I will see you on the other side, and she's going to send it like Sekam. Alicia.
Thanks so much for that, Rams, and welcome everybody. Good morning. So good to be with you all this Tuesday morning. As Rams says, I'm Alicia Seckham, and I'm going to be moderating a conversation over the next 45 minutes. We're going to be taking a look at now bridging the digital divide, because like Makgosi said, it can be very daunting, right? Empowering growth and innovation pertaining specifically to SMEs in this new digital era. We hear it over and over again. The message hasn't been lost on us. Bridging the digital divide empowers SMEs to harness the benefits of technology, of digital transformation. This way, of course, technology has changed the way business is being done. But access to affordable digital tools and infrastructure is still what acts as a major constraint to many SMEs that are out there doing business. And when it isn't that, well then quite frankly, it's access to skills, to education that will empower SMEs to navigate digital platforms and tools that have been provided effectively enough, that will afford them the ability to leverage all that it comes with, the benefits that have been highlighted so far this morning, cost efficiencies, growth. Today, we're going to try and get to grips with all of that, what needs to be done to start closing the gap and explore some of the options that are in fact available to SMEs out there to better leverage the benefits that come with this digital era. What are some of the cost-effective solutions to adopting these digital innovations without straining budgets and practically speaking? And that's where the emphasis needs to lie, right? Practical solutions. How does one go about establishing a network of resources at the end of the day to aid SMEs down this digital journey that they choose to pursue? Joining me for the conversation over the next 45 minutes, and as I introduce each of you, can I ask you please to join me on stage? You've already gotten pretty familiar with Lunga. So Lunga, if I can ask you to make your way up. Lunga is CEO of Telkom Consumer and Small Business. Mashaka Moseana, who's Director of the Centre of Entrepreneurship at Johannesburg Business School. Karen Light, who's expert solution architect within business and digital advisory at BCX. And Tabiso Mokhane, who's client relations officer at 4IRI. There we go. Welcome to you all. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. And before we get into the conversation, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to just reiterate what Rams highlighted. This is a conversation that is going to call on your participation. So in the final 15 minutes that we have on stage, we're going to be opening things up to the audience, whether you're joining us in the room in person or online as well. So please, there will be a roving microphone doing its rounds. If you've got any questions for any of our panelists this morning, feel free to direct them this way. Online, type them into the chat box. I will then pose them on your behalf. Let's get straight into it. For now, Lunga, I'm going to start off with you because it all sits amongst the Sustainable Development Goals, right? Recommendations for the G20 to, foster this inclusive and sustainable digital ecosystem. How much of a closing of the divide are we actually looking at?
It's actually quite high, all right? Well, it also depends on where you are. So, I mean, if I look at just South Africa as a country, you've got what we call rural areas, in essence, and then you get urban areas or semi-urban, in essence, depending on how you look at it. If I go back to how South Africa has done it before, and we can locate Telkom, right, in essence, as an infrastructure company under the Department of Postal Services, I think so, back in the day. That's over 200 years. So they actually laid out the foundation with the telephone, right, into almost every part of the country. And over the years, and then that sort of evolved into different technologies to allow people to get into the internet and some other services. Early 90s, I think the country sort of went through a transition, and the government then decided, you know what, let's spin this off as a separate entity. And then later, they started looking at public-private partnerships, which made Telkom a private entity in essence. Now, with private entities, they have one ambition, which is to make profits, right, for their own shareholders and also stakeholders in essence. It changes the game in terms of where you can actually invest in infrastructure. Now, if I look at it today, the gap is huge, right, in terms of the provision of those services and at what price point. So you've got a lot of large privately funded enterprises doing this, and obviously their goal is to profit maximization for their own shareholders. And those shareholders, actually, most of us that are sitting here, they've got a job because it's your pension funds, right? Now, to close that gap, because if you've got a commercial outcome versus a social outcome, there's bound to be conflict. That's where government has to come in and say, you know what, the gap is huge. You guys can't get into these areas. We will co-invest with you to actually close the gap, right, into the rural areas. As we also see migration from rural to urban, let's actually make sure that we can catch those customers, or let's catch the people, right, that are coming from rural areas into the urban by co-partnering with the private sector to build the backbone.
We'll get to building off those relationships in a little bit later in the conversation. Karen, what do we blame for this wide gap that still persists? I mean, do we blame something like COVID-19, for example? We all knew that digital transformation was coming, but its forward momentum has certainly been accelerated, right? Shortening the timelines for everyone to get up to speed. So we may talk about the fact that we've got this ability to leapfrog, but we've got to act fast.
Yeah, so I think the gap, sometimes SMEs don't think that they need digital. Because if you are selling pizzas, you're saying, but I need to get pizza to my customers. But it's also about the administration to look at how you can become more efficient. So it's that kind of, that thinking of that they actually need digital, not only for the service or product that they're delivering, but to make it more efficient. And then potentially the perceived costs, to say, but it's going to cost a lot. But now we're seeing a lot of platforms coming in, software as a service. You no longer need to go into that whole buying your own infrastructure.
Yeah. As you can see, we've got hints towards of the solutions coming to the surface already, and we'll be flipping the script on this conversation in just a bit, Mashaka, getting to those solutions for SMEs. But I want to lay the ground here and get real. To what extent is technology really changing the face of small business?
I'll just have to say to a very large extent. Look, I've been in the space of supporting small businesses for quite some time. And what we have always known is that there is a challenge with how we train and support small medium enterprises. And that became glaringly evident during COVID-19, when COVID-19 forced a lot of businesses, corporations and small businesses, to automate because of remote working, either automate or digitize their own businesses. And our very own small medium enterprises in South Africa, they failed to do that. They even failed to pivot towards the challenges that were coming to them in that time. So we had to take a look at ourselves as professors of practice and even the incubation space and accelerators in saying that all that we have done over time with the ESD funds that have been invested in this, how is it that all the interventions that we have done, they didn't prepare our own small medium enterprises to face this volatile and ambiguous environment that they find themselves in? Such that most of the businesses, because they couldn't pivot and because they couldn't adopt digital technologies at the time, they shriveled and faded. They couldn't survive. So what we have seen is that with the universities, first we really need to decolonize the way that we impart knowledge. Because our own SMMEs, we put them in a training environment where we do not give them the opportunity to translate the knowledge practically in their own contextual environments. And with SMEs, there's a high risk because whatever you learn, you need to apply in your business immediately. And if you fail, the consequences are dire, the consequences are higher. So there really is a need for us, and we have adopted it. We've launched the Artificial Intelligence Institute at the Johannesburg Business School under the University of Johannesburg. We've done several tests on how we support small and medium enterprises. And I think that we do have a proof of concept on how to remove the digital transformation for small and medium enterprises from their cost center into their profit center.
Yeah, and that is the incentive at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
the benefits that come with digital. It's how it affects the bottom line, right? I came across a very interesting quote as I was preparing for this conversation. SMMEs are intrinsically cautious and slow adopters of technology, especially where SMEs are typically under-resourced and so cannot afford expensive missteps.
Absolutely.
As tradition would have it, sticking to the tried and tested ways of doing things makes good sense. It's not profitable, but it makes good sense. So how do we start challenging that, Thabiso? With your experience in both entrepreneurship and technology as well, give us a success story or an example of where bridging the digital divide significantly empowered an SME to transform their business and thrive.
I mean, is my mic on?
Yep.
I think it's a case of, cascading benefits, moving from one SMME success into the other. And I mean, Makgosi actually mentioned Yoko, for instance, and Ikoka, and what they've managed to do in this space in terms of really being able to enable digital payments within the SMME space has been astronomical. Even just how they've actually been able to capture those stories has been such an inspiring thing to actually see. But I think that we also need to kind of really come to a point of sincerity here and really speak a bit to the contrarian truth here. The contrarian truth here is that the only way that SMMEs can essentially access innovation and digital transformation is if we actually lower the gauntlet for IP in this country. And that's the honest truth. If you've got open source, you can actually then put technological advancements in the hands of these SMMEs at almost a zero of the actual cost multiple. And that's what we should actually start to look at. I think that South Africa needs to really just start to position itself at the point of, really driving the rate of innovation within the country. I mean, if we sit and we had to talk about it at length, what is the cornerstone of our most innovative era in this country? I mean, if I had to just pass that out into the room right now, it's a bit of a cricket's moment to say that, But if you do move into the Silicon Valley space, you know that the semiconductor space, and that was the actual catalyst for Silicon Valley. We've seen how CryptoPunks, for instance, which is a complete rebellion, a constructive one and a very organized one, brought about, the era of blockchain and how that's actually transformed the world. So I think we need to look at it a bit differently. I think we need to be a bit more brave, and I think we need to be a bit more rebellious in terms of how we actually approach the future.
Very quickly, Lunga, just as an outline at the top, what are the key components of a comprehensive, multifaceted approach to bridging the digital divide for small businesses, given the realities we've just outlined?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. So SMEs, they exist for a reason, right? To sell their products and services to consumers, right? So you first have to bridge the gap between consumers that are digital savvy or have access to some sort of a digital platform, right? And also connect them with SMEs. In a way, you almost have to go deeper and say who's going to lay out the infrastructure at what cost, and what's going to be the cost of data, right? Everyone always says data is expensive in South Africa as compared to Nairobi, right? Move beyond Nairobi, right, into the next town. Are you going to get the same price? No. It's cheaper in London. Go beyond London or New York. You're going to see prices starting to change. And they usually do that in relation to the infrastructure that's been laid out and the amount of people that can consume it. So if you really want to have an impact, you got to have government coming together with private sector to say, let's lay out the foundation of all of this, because all of these other nice things we're talking about won't exist if there's no infrastructure. I'll give you another typical example. So we've got a huge shortage of what I call developers, right? Either Java or I don't know what's the latest. These days, every time I talk to the IT guys, there's a shortage. So therefore, let's go offshore. And I had an interesting conversation. So I was in a Teams call, and the guys were giving an update. And this guy is literally sitting in India, giving us an update about the platform that he's building for us. And then he quickly says, guys, can you give me 10 minutes, right? And then he disappears for 10 minutes, and then he comes back. And we're like, okay, what are you doing? Like, no, I was rebooting my generator, right? I'm like, where are you working from? He's like, listen, dude, I'm in the rural area, right?
Yeah.
I was like, how's connectivity? Oh, it's actually great. I don't have to move to Mumbai, right? I can actually do stuff from here. Now, imagine if you had someone in Umtata or deep into the Polokwane, I don't know, Limpopo or KZN, right? Offering the same service as an SME, one person, which is development, right, of any solutions, and they can work from where they are, because they've got access to the internet, either via mobile tower or the old telephony or any broadband service, including satellite in essence. That won't happen if private enterprises are the only ones who have to do it. There's got to be a social compact with government to do that.
Absolutely. You've got to, to get this equation right, you've got to get both the public and private sector playing here. Just let's touch on that infrastructure rollout a little bit. What's the status update as far as infrastructure rollout is being concerned, especially, Lunga, where you're, looking at competing priorities like sheer access to power?
Yeah, I mean, there's that, right? There's also the actual, so how much it used to cost to lay out fiber 10 years ago, today it's almost 90% less, right? However, if you're laying out a kilometer of fiber, you've got to figure out who's going to consume it and at what price point and how long will it take for you to recover your money. So if I look at urban areas in South Africa, fiber is almost everywhere where you can find it, or where there's people, right, where it can be commercializable. So in essence, when I look at high dense, high commercializable type of areas, you're almost close to 100%. High dense, difficult to commercialize, the penetration is almost at 20%. So let's take townships or even informal settlements, right? But fiber is not the only technology. If I then take the same slice and look at what I call mobility, which is fixed wireless, what we know as LTE or data, through a router, close to 100%. Everyone has that, these days. If I look at cell phones, everyone has that. So in essence, so infrastructure is via those technologies. But if I look at satellite technology, it's there, it can be utilized, however, too expensive. We've seen with MultiChoice changing their decoders, right, where they used to keep the content on the decoder to where they're actually now diverting it. So they actually require you to have some sort of internet access to watch catch-up, right? So everyone is playing with all of these things. So from where we are, high urban, high dense, high commercializable, it's there. Outside of that, it's almost non-existent. I've got a couple of farmers as my customers that are really, really struggling because I'm ripping off the old copper lines that I can't keep going because they get stolen all the time, right? So now I have to give them fiber. Now I can't because it's too expensive. Satellite, the prices haven't come down because there are a lot of people there, right, on the technology. So hence I'm saying, pull in the public sector to say, how can we do this together to enable much more infrastructure being laid out into almost every corner. Our license condition on the mobility side, they require us to do that. However, that clause has been changed so much to, yes, we'll get coverage to 100%, but where there's people. And how to define people, it's got to be a number of X with this commercializable value.
There's a whole lot of parameters that we've got to take into consideration here. It's also very forceful pull on government to get involved here. Thabiso, in the interim, are there cost-effective solutions and strategies that SMEs can, implement to work around some of the challenges that they currently face? And you mentioned lowering the gauntlet. Perhaps let's throw the gauntlet down on business. How can tech companies better tailor their tools, their, platforms to meet specific needs that cater to the demands of SMEs right now?
I think that it's a good question, but it's also kind of open-ended as well, because the essence of a tech company is to solve latent human problems, right? And that's what you are essentially trying to do. It's just that there's a methodology to what you do that's kind of different from what any other business would actually kind of employ. I think that, again, I'm a firm believer in the internet. I think I'm the youngest panelist here, being born in the 90s. I'm a firm believer in the internet, and I truly believe that open source technology, open source, software, open source, anything is going to be the future. Because we're living in the age of ubiquitous information sharing, information is free. It's everywhere. Now, the key trick here is for entrepreneurs to learn how to actually then catalyze information and turn it into value. And I think that's where the true innovation is actually going to come in the next, coming generations. It's a mindset shift. It's a way we actually think. Dr. Machaka was actually speaking about, the failure of entrepreneurs or SMMEs to actually evolve during the COVID-19 phase and really pivot. But nobody really teaches you the methodology behind pivoting.
Yeah.
It's a method. It's not something that you just wake up and imagine that, hey, now I'm going to pivot because times are hard. It's a methodology that you need to kind of really get and institutionalize. And once you've institutionalized that methodology, you put entrepreneurs and SMEs in a better position. But in terms of just, really catalyzing that, I think that the internet is the greatest answer. We've seen it with YouTube, how that's created an entire creator economy. I mean, we've seen it with TikTok even, and how that's actually decentralized, content creation as well. So these are the new ways of actually doing things, where you access something for free, a tool for free, and it's about how you catalyze that into value that actually then monetizes it.
Yeah.
So that's where my headspace is at, and that's what I see for the future.
And it's so important what Tabiso is highlighting here, that it's going to require a shift in mindset. The way we think about things, the way we approach things, like it or not, all of this is going to come with some kind of price tag, right, Mashaka? So looking at SMEs overcoming, let's say, budget constraints, let's take the conversation into that arena, associated with adopting some of these digital innovations now. Are there innovative financing options available for technology investments? And do we need to start thinking differently about things, or is it what it is?
Innovative financing options. There's an advocacy role that we play at the Center for Entrepreneurship for Small Medium Enterprises. And seeing that we've always been able to mobilize funds in supporting small businesses through the Enterprise and Supply Development Fund, which I have to say, it grows exponentially, and yet the results on the other end with small medium enterprises is a paradox. So what we have now started the advocacy on is on repurposing even how we look at enterprise and supply development, or even the thinking around triple BEE in saying that it's an impact investing fund. And that what you would normally see with corporations investing in small medium enterprise in that element, or with that instrument, is on pure training, because really they're not training them to be competent to absorb them into their supply chain, because they're quite happy with their own supply chain. They don't want to transform that supply chain, but they're very happy to tick off a check box. And that does a disservice for small medium enterprises. But what we're saying is that with the same spend, now bring it over to the university, because you can leverage from the strength of the professors and the students that are highly entrepreneurial. So we've tested this already. So what we have done is we've engaged with several corporations and multinationals to give off their ESD fund, 3% of net profit after tax. And what we have done with that, we have supported small medium enterprises to digitally transform. We need to accept the challenges that, we need to recognize the challenges that are facing small medium enterprises. And most of them, we have about 2.6 to 2.9 million small medium enterprises in South Africa, and about 30% of that is the one that's contributing to the GDP of South Africa. And they really do not have many employees in their companies, and with the requisite skill that would support them to be, to function well in this digital age. So what we're saying is that South Africa has always had the skills gap, and now it has widened up even further because of the 4-hour skills that they need to possess. Now, we have graduates, but we're not training them, and I need to look around the room if my employers are not in here, because I might just get fired. I have to admit, we really are not training them to be fit for the world of the future. Where they don't have the requisite skill. But now we started decolonizing education in itself, because we want our own graduates to give a return on investment on small medium enterprises and corporation as well. You might know, and I'm going to come to the point, you might know of this concept of Engine 1 and Engine 2 of innovation, right? Introduced
Spell
by,
it out for us.
Okay, Engine 1 and Engine 2 introduced by Bain and Company. And the concept around there comes from Silicon Valley and what happens there in Boston or in with MIT and Harvard, in the communities that they exist in that we leave Engine 1 for what you know and do very well. You've captured the market. That's where your bread and butter comes from, for all corporations, for all companies. However, you also need a second engine in case the first engine falls away. But in the second engine, it allows you to fail, to innovate, to bring in products that you would test in the market. And should they have a solid proof of concept, you throw them into the Engine 1 to generate revenue. Yeah. Corporations are doing this. Discovery is doing this, and that's why it's leading in the market. However, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And what we're saying, we're positioning the universities with the strength of professors and the students to be an Engine 2 of innovation for small medium enterprises.
Yeah.
And what we have done so far with the Innovation Lab at the Johannesburg Business School is that we have now given the proficiency of coding and problem solving
to these undergrad students from all faculties. They don't even have to come from, the Faculty of Computing and Engineering. And we've given them either coding skills and specializing in gaming, VR and XR, web development, and mobile development. And what we have seen now so far with the SMEs that we have supported is that they would come over and we have AI tools off the shelves that we can support them with. The thing is, we do not have shortage, as Makgosi has said earlier on, that people spend a lot of time now on the internet. Look, it's not information that we lack, but it's the adoption and translating knowledge or theory into practice for small medium enterprises. So we're closing that gap of translating whatever they have seen, either on the internet, on LinkedIn, on the YouTube, so that they can apply it practically, immediately in their own businesses, and also reducing the risk of adoption in their businesses so they don't make mistakes. But then that's the one thing, adopting those tools. But then we have a second leg where we function as an agile innovation engine, where you can come in and innovate for your own business.
Karen, a lot's been said there. I mean, that's very meaty and it leaves us with a lot to digest. But, at the end of the day, SMEs cannot walk this path blindly. The risk would be ending up nowhere slowly at extreme expense, right? They need to be intentional about their digitalization strategy. They need to align their culture. That's the one thing. They need to align their structure and processes to strategy at the end of the day. So if we consider SMEs charting a digital transformation map, I mean, what does something like that look like? What's the step 1, 2, 3?
So I think the word intentional is really what it's about. So you need to set that vision. They need to set a vision for themselves as to how digital do they want to become. And then they need to also think about things in phases, because digital transformation is not just a single step, it's a journey. So you need to think of those phases that you need to go through, and you need to then think intentionally about your stakeholders or your customers. And not only your customers, the staff that you are working with and your community. So what do you need for those different parties? And then look at the technologies that can solve the problems for those parties. So it's that vision, it's a stepped plan with the technologies on, and then looking at so that it solves for your stakeholders, and then the training that goes with that. And that then helps to chart a way, and that when you're doing something, it has context. I'm not choosing blockchain because everybody's talking about blockchain. It is actually going to help me in my business. So
intentional is being intentional is are the operative words there. What are the common challenges, Karen, that SMEs come across when trying to formulate this digitalization strategy? And perhaps let's take it a step further. Beyond just the challenges, we talk about benefits, but are there risks that SMEs need to be cognizant of?
Yeah, so I think one of the risks that have been mentioned is to become obsolete if you don't follow that path. The risk of cybersecurity. So it's an SMME will now have a lot of data or go onto an open platform. So make sure that it is secure and that your data is secure. Even if you're using your phone, make sure that your app has got a PIN on. That kind of thing. So I think there are a lot of risks around cybersecurity and keeping things secure.
Yeah. We can't deny, though, Lunga, plan or no plan. This is a very daunting exercise, right, for anyone out there. So for those that are embarking, do they have the necessary know-how? I mean, many don't boast the luxury of, having a skill set that sits within their arsenal or IT staff advising them. Are there enough avenues of support for access that will assist SMEs along this transformation journey?
Yeah, I mean, I always, break down things, in a simple format. So, I once was driving in the car and, stopped at the garage and I was looking what's around, and then I found this lady who was selling nguni rugs, right? You know these nguni rugs? You find a lot of them in Joburg these days. And I said to her, I mean, who's your customer? I says, well, it's you guys passing by. I said, how many do you sell a day? Like, don't ask me a day, maybe a month, right? And then she gave me a number. I said, like, okay. have you thought about, because I was sort of realizing that actually she needs access to markets,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, okay, there's someone out there who's actually looking for these rugs, including me. How do we create that opportunity for access to a different market for her? Now comes a concept of marketplaces. So practically, think about what you want to sell, and then find an avenue of how to sell this. And that avenue must give you more customers than you normally have, right? The footfall. Because if you go into a mall, you're only going to get people that go to a mall, and you're going to pay a lot of money to be there. So there's a lot of marketplaces that are actually free. I said, do you know about Google My Business? It's actually a free proposition, right? There's social. Now, you also have to find context as well. If people are there on social media to do certain things, when you're trying to sell them something, it's not going to work. The yield is usually less than 1%, by the way, in some of these marketplaces. But if you find a marketplace where people that access that marketplace, they know that they are there to buy something, you have a better conversion rate, right? If you're doing that. So there's also tools, right, that you can access that are for free that would actually allow that lady who's selling Guni rugs, right, to be able to become much more efficient. So I'm thinking of Zoho, which is a small ERP system, right, for SMEs that she could adopt. It costs little, well, I'm not going to say little, but it's much more cheaper than an Oracle system, right, or SAP system. There is Zero, which basically will help you run your accounting, which is tightly integrated into SARS, so that you can do your VAT claims and actually file. Right? Those are the technologies that you can adopt. You don't need to actually be technologically savvy to do that, but it helps you to find more customers. It helps you to become much more productive. There are platforms like Lulaland or Funda, right, where you can find financing for working capital or, to actually grow your business. They can access those tools as well. I mean, if you go back to that lady, she doesn't have to be technology savvy. Find a marketplace, you have your business there. What you asked about risks, right? It's the cyber security. However, there's another one. I think Rems mentioned that when you order something, it comes, right? And it's not the correct order. Someone must come and pick it up, right, to create a better customer experience, but you won't go back, right? So you're trying to avoid that happening, because when you're doing reverse logistics, it costs you more money as an SME.
And if you don't have the scale,
even worse, right?
Even worse.
During the shutdown, in the past couple of years, what we found glaring, which was difficult for SMEs, was to actually find a way of, they'll open a store online, an order comes, they have to process the order and make sure that it's they keep the right quantities to fulfill this demand. So they couldn't do logistics at all. Now, reverse logistics even much more expensive to go into your place and pick it up, but to actually have proper logistics, platforms to fulfill this demand is even a daunting task, right? So they've got to do it in small bites and pieces, get into a marketplace, see how it works. What are some of the tools that you can consume on open source that are free? Get into those and start using them as well, and then you'll see the benefits to your business.
I'm very cognizant of this very big ticking clock in front of us, and we are going to open up to the audience for questions. Before we do, Thabiso, building a network of resources is crucial for SMEs, right? Embarking on this digital journey. What advice do you have for SMEs on how they can establish and leverage such networks effectively? Are there any specific partnerships or collaborations that have been particularly successful in this regard?
I think I would like to answer that with something very cynical, to say that, sorrow loves company, right? So when you are going through your pitch of pain as an entrepreneur, the best thing to do is to actually get involved in communities of other entrepreneurs that are in a similar space as you. I mean, we've done that ourselves. I'm a part of multiple entrepreneurial communities, continental, international, local one. One of my favorite ones that I'm very involved with is Dakis in Tech, for instance. I'm looking around the room and I can see so many of my community members here. And that's the power of community, the fact that you go to a place where you can actually then not only share information on things that are happening in the ecosystem, but you also have the opportunity to also kind of learn and really ask hard questions, which your peers can kind of really come to your aid and really be able to answer. So I think that is a very important thing. Leverage communities to leverage resources. And if you can do that, if you can literally leverage those communities, build those communities yourself, you are in a much better position to kind of navigate and maneuver around the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in South Africa. I mean, I've done it before. As an experiment, I started a Facebook group, for instance, for SMMEs in a specific location. took me about 30 days to get 5,000 members on that group. And it was just being quite clear and succinct about what the purpose of the group is.
Yeah.
And even to Lunga's point, mentioning that, the lady who's selling the Nguni carpet might not know who her ideal customer is. And communities can help you refine that particular idea of who your ideal customer is if you can really put it through that entire loop. So it's an entire loop that you put it through, and that community will kind of give you the feedback that you need. So my long and short of it, if you're feeling sorrowful and going through something on your own as an entrepreneur, find someone to share that sorrowful experience with.
And it really does speak to one of the first questions that came through on the chat room this morning, because it emphasizes this need to build a sustainable ecosystem, a support ecosystem that takes you through this journey. When you have a question like this, why is it so difficult to reach responsible people in big companies, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open to questions from the audience at this point. So if you can indicate by show of hand, if you've got a question for anyone, the roving microphone will find its way to you for you to pose directly. Is there a roving microphone? There we go. Their hands going up in front. Okay, while it makes its way there, let's tackle this one, Lunga. I'm Lorenzo from Advadno Tech Integrated Tech Solutions. My question stems from a funding point of view. Empowering SMMEs is the future, but we often don't get funding from corporates, especially newly established Black-owned companies vying for businesses in areas where well-established companies play and dominate. Further to my question, what is Telkom's take on SMME finance for digital upcoming businesses in South Africa?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak specifically about ours, right? We've got a couple of programs. So we've got something called Future Makers. Now, the way you actually want to access these programs, you must almost match what you want to offer, right, to a corporate, because corporates are getting narrow in terms of their scope. They're only looking for certain types of entrepreneurs that they can scale, because going through an ESD program, and then at the end of it, you actually don't have customers to sell to, right? It becomes an issue. That's why they fail. So the way we've thought about it was to say, okay, let's find entrepreneurs in a particular space that we can support in solving our own customer problems. So if you're a technician that actually lays at fiber, let's bring you in. We'll put you through a Future Makers program where we support you with funding, but you have a customer at the end of it, which is Telkom as a start, right? And beyond that, we start connecting you with all the other enterprises that are looking for work from suppliers, or SMEs such as you.
Yeah.
We used to have an asset manager managing our funds up to the tune of 500 million, funding tech startups. We've actually, helped, seed fund some of the well-known ones, such as, I think, Yoko at some point, and also Sweep South. I think you've seen a couple of those outside as well that we're showcasing. And those ones, we're actually helping them to actually scale, right? And they can sell to market, not particularly to us. But corporates are becoming much more narrower on their scope. So you've got to look for corporates that are playing in your space and apply through those. Everyone has an enterprise, supplier development fund, but I'd actually employ you to look beyond those ones, because within each corporate, they might have a different channel for you that is particularly tailor-made for you to succeed, rather than to become a supplier, right, of Telkom, but become much more a business partner.
Absolutely. Lady in the front.
Morning. I'm Gutlana Smith from Medsol Consulting. My question is directed to Lunga. With marketplaces such as Facebook Marketplace, how can an SME ensure that they come out as verified? Because you get different businesses online that are not verified, and sometimes the prices are off. And the next question is to Makgosi. I don't know if you can ask Makgosi as well. Makgosi.
Okay, let's let Lunga tackle his question.
Okay, I have two questions.
Ooh, okay. Let's see how this clock ticks, right?
Yeah.
Lunga.
Thank you.
A quick response to that question.
So a lot of marketplaces actually don't verify businesses, right? Because their model is a bit different. Take Facebook as an example. They're monetizing you, right, with your own content, and then they've got a marketplace on the other side. So they actually don't have an incentive of verifying them. I don't know if they're going to get there. Google My Business at some point was caught up with similar problems in New York. I'd actually say go to marketplaces where you do know that you'll be verified and customers do know that. I think Yep, ours, basically, it does that very well, but also Take a Lot as well. They do that very well in terms of verifying that you are who you are, and the products and services that you're selling are actually quite real, and they use their infrastructure to deliver the products and services. And that's very important because a lot of people are being spammed. So take Gum3 as well, right? They compete with us, but yeah, they don't verify businesses, right? And people do know that. That's why they sometimes, you actually find people actually going back to the old Yellow Pages book to find proper businesses because they're like, I can't trust Google anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to allow for one to Makgosi very quickly before we move on. And your third one, if we have time, we'll get back to.
Thank you, Lunga from Medsol Consulting. My question to you, when you discuss digital transformation, you said that we should try to avoid overheads, but you also discussed the state of the economy, which is going to remain the same for the next 3 to 4 years. As a small business, it is our responsibility to ensure that we create jobs. So I've found that with the whole moving into the digital space, a lot of jobs are dying out or being ruled out. How can we balance job creation and obviously avoiding overheads? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. It's a very good one. So I think they always say that there's going to be jobs that die out, but we don't talk about the new jobs that are going to be created. And that's what we need to look forward to. And similarly, as I was preparing for this session, for example, I found an article where they were giving a view around what are these new jobs that we're talking about. Data scientists, for example, that's going to be big. Artificial intelligence, those are going to be big. Why is that important for you? Because once you are in the digital transformation state, the next level, which is what I didn't talk about, is around the insights. How then are you going to start using the data insights to start informing how you run your business or to start informing how you strategize actually for your business, So it's going to remain quite difficult, by the way. Anything that is more administrative, I think you're right, those jobs are going to start getting out. You will have to think about what technology do you need to employ in your business to still do those things, type of a thing. So, I don't think there's an easy answer to it. I may not even have all the right answers. Sometimes when I read these things, I'm like, how's that going to work? I can't actually even figure out how these things are going to work. So me and you are going to be at it, and we got to figure it out together. Thank you.
There's a hand up there. So if I can ask you to pass the microphone. Thank you so much. There we go.
Morning. My name is Nelly, and I'm the founder of a company called Olemic Energy. We concentrate on personal and leadership development. I heard a little bit from one of the panelists, one of the questions that you asked about risks. And my question would be, I won't pose it to anyone directly, anybody who feels comfortable to take it can. My question is, how would you suggest, because reality is that a lot of what we call SMEs are actually startups, and most of them in their businesses, one person wears all the hats. Yeah. Now, for a person who is looking at moving with the times and with the revolutions and all of that, wants to move from paper-based, especially a service company, for instance, who wants to move from a paper-based face-to-face and want to scale up and also have access to your rural areas where Lunga has also indicated the challenges with connectivity, internet, no information that is actually filtering there. The risks that they face, cyber risks, data security, privacy, and all of that. How would you suggest that a startup or a bootstrapper who wears all the different hats in their company actually approaches that to make sure that there is still security and there is still some scaling?
Okay, who's putting their hand up to tackle that one? Tabiso.
I think the simplest way to do it, besides being intentional in the beginning, is to set up systems. I think that a lot of the time in small businesses, you find that systems are amiss. They don't exist from the onset. So you need to be able to look at your business through the lens of all of its potential risks, right? Information risk, operational risk, financial risk, and any other risks that might emerge, and set up systems to address that in the simplest way. And that's the easiest thing that I can literally think of from the top of my head. Systems. Systems and processes are quite important, and I think that as entrepreneurs, we try and evade them because we think that we're exempt from them. We're not. At a small scale, you need to have those systems and processes in play for a simple thing. I'll make a typical example. So when I was doing e-commerce in Alexandria and Soweto, for instance, right, we knew that we wanted to actually initiate digital payments in that space. But then the particular client that we were working with was Spaza Shops, for instance, and it was very difficult to do that because we had to kind of eat humble pie and really figure out the fact that the guy at the Spaza is taking his money in cash from his customer. What makes us think that we're going to take our money any different from him? And that meant that I had to set up financial controls, which were bloody damn old draconian, and very basic. A simple thing like saying to my guys, like, you need to go and take money. If you're collecting money, you need to go and deposit it by 12 o'clock midday. Any money that kind of really just, overlaps that time frame, for me is a risk. And we have to talk about it, like, why do you still have money at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? So it's those basic fundamentals that we have to kind of really put in play and kind of surrender to and actually accept that that's what really drives your business. It's as simple as that.
It's systems at the onset. It's drawing up these digital maps that will help and perhaps eradicate the excuse that some SMEs use of, well, I wear so many hats, right? Ladies and gentlemen, this has just gone red. So we are going to hit full stop on this conversation, as invigorating as it has been. Thank you all for having joined us in conversation. Thank you all for your participation as well. I'm not going to labor the end notes too much, but to say that, the success of any business, as everyone would have well established at this point in the digital era, is going to be dependent on, yes, having the tools, the expertise, the knowledge, but systems and roadmaps in place from the onset to turn ideas into what we're calling and labeling productive, efficient, cost-competitive businesses in what is a digital-first economy. From me, Alicia Seckham, it's been a pleasure hosting you. Thank you so much for your time. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you to the panelists. Thank you very much, and another round of applause. Now, you are all going to like the next announcement. We're going to have a break for about 25 minutes for networking, bit of tea. The ablution facilities are to my right, could be your left, as you go out the door to the end of this session. Please, in 20 minutes, let's come back so that in 25 we can start. Thank you. Welcome back to the second part of the Blaze with Telkom Business Conference. Greetings once again to our online viewers and to all of you in the room. Thank you for coming back. Tea and coffee can be tempting for people never to come back to their previous commitments. So thank you very much for returning. I did touch up my nose with powder so that I look much better for you for this second session. So a reminder about our social media competition. Keep posting, the two of you who've been posting, about the conference on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram using the hashtag Blaze with Telkom Business. Now I'm going to read one of the posts because I need to acknowledge this post. It's very important so that she knows I acknowledge. Precious Maepa says, digital transformation is the future. Not only does it cut costs for SMEs, but it helps intrigue, disrupt spaces and markets that we limit ourselves to reach. We have an opportunity to reach the market, bridging the gap between demand and supply. Hashtag gas speed. You're going to be my next guest next time we do this. Clearly, with this kind of knowledge, you will sound far better than me. She adds, Mr. Rams Mabote, you may reward me my prize. It's not in my hands, but thank you very much, Precious. Thank you for participating. Please do participate. There is a whopping 10,000 Rand prize of an inverter waiting for you from the organizers. We are going to give it up at the end of this session. So, an increasingly digital and interconnected world is very imperative for SMEs, right? We have to adapt to technologies, and I say we because I am an SME. This is precisely why I do what I do. We have to make sure that our business models become increasingly important in the space, and if we don't adapt, they will never become important. In fact, they will die. And to that effect, our next panel of discussion is titled Digital Migration, Identifying Innovative Ways to Embrace 4IR into Business Models. Now, during this discussion, we'll discover groundbreaking strategies. Again, I hate cliches, but they are truly groundbreaking. So I'm not saying that because it was scripted. They are groundbreaking, so please trust me. So groundbreaking strategies to seamlessly integrate the power of 4IR into your business and the innovative technologies and the tools that can drive growth, efficiency, and access and competitive edge in the digital era. Now, I'm going to introduce my panelists. I was given 4.5 paragraphs of your bios. I've tried to cut them to 4.5 words each so that we use the 45 minutes much more profitably. First to join me, Head of Medium Business and Diversified Sales, Telkom Business, Srini Mandri. Please come up as I read your bio. Currently National Sales Manager at Telkom Business and is responsible for Telkom's high-value fixed customer portfolio. Has 20 years of experience in the telecommunications industry with various network operators. Srini, thank you very much. Khulule Koma is the CEO and founder of Credible. And he's going to help me to pronounce that later when I got it, if I got it wrong. A talent marketplace connecting business clients to trusted digital professionals. Born in Kimberley, probably one of the 4 people I know who are born in Kimberley, including Saul Plucky. It's a very important thing, including Saul Plucky, guys. Don't laugh about this. It's very good. Kholu is a 2-time founder with a mission for solving the education to work challenge in South Africa. His interests are technology, digital products, gamification, and design thinking. Kholu, please join us on stage. Thank you very much. He promises to beat me at golf soon. We shall see about that. The next panelist, Hepsi Mkungo, together with Mpopi Kupe, co-founded Zevoli Growth Partners back in 2014. Zevoli Growth Partners specializes in assisting corporates in unlocking shared value through tailored SME development programs. I hope at some point these terms will become easier in English, because even I think that they're too deep. Pepsi, please come and join us on stage. I must tell you that I pulled her off a deathbed. She was so ill yesterday and she was crying stuff. And I said, if you're not coming, I'm not coming. Then she made it. Thank you very much, Pepsi. And finally, Tsepo Mahoma, Head of Business Innovation and Entrepreneurship, SADC Youth Forum. Tsepo serves as the Head of Business Innovation and Entrepreneurship, as we say, for SADC Youth Forum, which is a regional platform for youth and youth organizations within the SADC region. He's vastly interested in the opportunities being brought forward by the digitization of the continent and specializes in disruptive innovation and 4IR. I'm going to ask you to sit there. Thank you very much. So, just a few ground rules. We've got 43 minutes to do this and finish. To do that, I'd like us to have a conversation. If you wait for me to ask you questions, it's going to take us long. If somebody wants to say something as somebody else speaks, do that. It's a conversation, right? Just come in. Of course, I will moderate it if I think you're out of order. We should never going to be, you are 4IR people who can't be out of order. Yeah. But also, most importantly, I'd like us to make concepts real and granular. Can we not speak language that is going to scare people out of this room and think, what were we doing there? I'm asking you very kindly that we make this relatable to everybody here. But most importantly, I'm going to ask you to participate. I'm just a facilitator. I told you up front, what I know about technology is exceptionally dangerous. I need you. So, I'm going to throw a big rock at you, Strini, because I called you first. 4IR, right? So I've run small businesses. All of them have failed over the years. One of the things we hate in small business is big terms. So when I hear 4IR, I want to run because I'm thinking I'm never going to manage that product. What is 4IR in layman's terms?
4IR is the fourth industrial revolution. Essentially, if you look at the first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution was factories and big production, big business. Thereafter, on the third industrial revolution, moving into your technology space, from connectivity. And the fourth industrial revolution is basically gathering all this information, a betterment of a technology from a connectivity perspective, bringing things like artificial intelligence with all the big data that we possibly would have gathered. Yeah. How can we utilize that data, to make much more informed decisions?
Yeah.
And essentially, if you look at the way things are changing and everything is happening at a much, much more faster rate. So, with 4IR, with the fourth industrial revolution, it's basically bringing all these things together, making it simpler, better, faster, much more effective for the normal human being, from a normal consumer perspective, even into businesses as well, incorporating those things to have better insights.
Okay. Can you hear Strini? Thank you. I just like shouting. I'm a typical broadcaster, right? We speak loud to the mic, even when it's right here in front of us. Holo, many years ago, when something called affirmative action was introduced, the corporate would tell you, we can't find black people, or we can't find black women. Well, we only found one for today. Right? Isn't there a new challenge? You recruit in this space of tech, and I can imagine SMEs would need new skills, new brains, but they will say to you, where do we find them? Because ultimately, I can't do some of the work that is expected of me to get my business into the new space of IR and integrate and become better at what I do.
First of all, good afternoon to our viewers.
You're still safe.
Online.
Morning.
So absolutely right. I think the direct answer is you'll find that kind of talent on Credible, shameless plug. But I think SMMEs are always faced with the idea of adopting new technologies and having the expertise to use those technologies. And I think that is a challenge not only faced by SMMEs, but also from corporate clients and enterprises. So there is a huge skills gap in the country. I think that's represented by the structural state of unemployment faced in the country, where there is a huge amount of demand for specific in-demand skills, jobs, whether that's cybersecurity, web development, but our labor force is just not in the position to take up those job opportunities. So you're also seeing a lot of the investments that NPOs, enterprises, education sectors are making in trying to build up that skills pipeline. So, I mean, it is a difficult challenge to try and find great talent. And I think that's really the differentiator. It's not just about finding talent, it's about finding great talent. So there's a lot of opportunities for young people to invest in new forms of learning, whether that's YouTube learning or even going onto Udemy, any of these online learning academies to kind of learn these in-demand skills.
If I can come in there, I think we should not see that as a barrier as well as SMMEs, because there are people that play within the AI space, play in the IoT space, that it's built their business around that. Right? So essentially what I'm saying is, if in our own business, we shouldn't see that as a gap. How can we leverage off those organizations that is that their core business, it's a primary function, that's what they do. They employ those people that gives them the edge, that has the skill sets within that environment. So as much as, yes, it is a barrier across, I think we should not use that as a barrier and a means in which we cannot aggregate within this new digital transformation within our business and adopt it as well within our businesses. We should not see it as a barrier.
Tsepo, we are told that Africa is the fastest growing continent. We're told that we're getting more gadgets into people's hands. People are involved every day with technology. Are you finding that, and are you finding that if we are involved in technology, I'm not talking young people in this case, so I shouldn't say we are. If they are they doing it entrepreneurially, or is it just?
Yes, firstly, I would like to greet the entire panel and the audience. So I think from an African perspective, especially from my side, because I work entirely at the SADC region, one of the key things that we have been able to, to harness was how to actually engage with young people on how we can teach them on how they can facilitate and also learn, for our skills. So we have established a center that deals with ensuring that young people that are interested in blockchain, IoT, big data, and data science, we are able to teach them on how they can utilize these things and embed them in their businesses. So one of the key things that businesses need to really ponder is that in most cases, businesses that utilizes and put 4R technologies into their strategies are businesses that are going to be more agile and more competitive in the future. So we have utilized AI into understanding on how can young people that are interested into this segment tap into these markets. One of the key things that I've noticed in the African region is that access to funding is one of the critical challenges. But with 4IR, we have learned that small businesses can also compete with larger corporations because AI has democratized access to information. There's a speaker that engaged that, right now it's no longer the issue of lack of access to information. Information is there, but how do we embed it? How do we unpack it in a more practical way that even for the layman, even for someone that is situated in a rural area, can be able to interpret the essence of AI? So one of the key things that I'm happy to be involved in is what we call the EFTA, the African Free Continental Trade Area.
Can we talk about that next?
Okay.
Thank you for that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
By the way, please have the water because I'm going to ask you very tough questions. I don't want you to be falling down. Thank you very much. Hepsi, he speaks about access to funding, but there are people who argue that access to markets is more
difficult.
What we need as SMEs, right? And what you do at Linkage speaks exactly to that. Talk to us about that and the importance of access to markets.
Okay. Morning, everyone. So in the intro, you mentioned that in 2014, I started a company called Zivoli Growth Partners. It's an enterprise and supply development company that helps corporates to run their ESG programs. During those years, we've learned a lot around the challenges that are faced by corporates in executing enterprise and supply development. At the same time, we've learned a lot around what small businesses are saying is not happening. They're tired of being developed over a period of time and no opportunities. So what we set out to do in 2013 was to establish One Linkage, which is a cloud technology business that focuses on connecting opportunity between corporates and small businesses. And how we do this, we had to understand from the various stakeholders within a corporate, what are the challenges that you're facing that don't allow you to provide opportunities to small businesses? What we've discovered is that in any given corporate, there are about 4 or 5 departments that interface with small businesses, and they're all in silos. There's a department that provides funding, one that provides opportunities, there's one that drives development, that's ESD, and then there's a CSI projects as such. So we interviewed each and every of those stakeholders to understand what's stopping you from supporting small businesses when there is a mandate from an ESD perspective, from BEE, from all those aspects. What's stopping you, the problem? So what we found from the procurement side, their problem was that we don't know who these SMMEs are, so we can't trust them. They are not vetted. The type of solutions that are out there are, it's one for all. So you have no idea to get a sense of how far they are in terms of execution, if they were to be given a contract. So we noted that, we thought that our solution must actually address that for that type of a client. Then we went to the enterprise and supply development team to ask them what's their challenge. Their challenge was that they need to demonstrate ROI when it comes to enterprise and supply development. But their challenge is that within the corporate, these SMMEs are not absorbed to then, conduct business with that. So between the two departments, they're not even talking to each other, and they're not working with each other. The third one was we spoke to the funding team. Funding team, similarly, they are given funds by that corporate to support small businesses. But if you look at the disbursements of the funds, you find that it doesn't even reach 5%. And the problem is that they are not ready, we don't know where to find them, all of that. So we then, in 2020, built a solution with a particular corporate that was focused on localization, supplier diversity, and ensuring that the problems that are challenged, the challenges that are faced by small businesses, there is a cohesive approach to them as a business, as, let's say, a company. So in this platform, we have 4 modules. The module is how to verify these SMMEs to give a level of comfort to these corporates. So we grade them blue, bronze, silver, gold to platinum. Platinum meaning that don't bother developing them. You're good to go. Yeah. They've gone through all the development already. Now give them work. Anyone below gold, that means they might have just a little tweak that they might need to work on. And therefore, you support them until they reach gold. Then we spoke to the funding side. Then they provide funding once you access to market. So we've asked them to list all their opportunities that they need to ring fence for EMEs and QSEs onto the platform. And these opportunities will then be listed on the platform so those SMMEs can apply, because now they're ready, right? So then nothing's stopping them from applying. And then the third part is that, okay, now they've applied, now they need funding to execute. Can you please give us your funding as well for this cohort? So that's what the platform does. It enables that, the development, skills, and all of that, and then works in tandem with your ERP systems, works in tandem with SAP, because SAP really closes these SMEs out. So we said, give us a platform that's an easy entry. Yeah. It's not a barrier to entry, but an easy entry. Then we'll work with your SAP to extract information from our linkage platform.
I'm going to interrupt you there. Okay. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Holo. Again, when we use big phrases, we could scare a lot of people, right? If I'm a plumber or I run a cooking oil distribution business, right? And hear things like 4IR, and I'm thinking, how is that going to move my oil from the producer to the customer, right? How do we make this 4IR sexy so that I'm not left outside the bus, right? How do we make it relatable to an ordinary SME that does not understand EME and QCPS and SEP and all these things that I've just heard this morning? None of which I understand.
It's an interesting question. I think on the previous panel, somebody was speaking about systems and processes, and I think that's the heart of every business. So if you are a small business, let's just assume that you don't have enough human resources to actually capacitate your business effectively. So a lot of these 4IR solutions can help you augment your capacity in terms of if you are running an accounting department, maybe you just need one person to actually run Xero. I think that was an example that was used. Yeah. Or if you're managing your customer relation communications via email, you can opt to use, I think Mr. Siyo said something like Zoho. So,
but does it save me money, Strini? So now I move to those solutions. I don't hire somebody in my office. She said we create businesses, small businesses to create jobs. Now I go to a Xero or whoever they are. Zoho, yeah. Does it save me money? And does it bring me, I'm sure it brings me efficiencies, but I mean, I want to save every cent I make.
Absolutely. If you're in small business, you want to make sure that you're competitive. You want to make sure that you driving costs down. You obviously want to be, profitable. So we know that we do not know all the stuff. You as a business owner, you might have a good product. You might have a good go-to-market strategy, but you might not have, the backings in terms of HR, your IRs, your accounting platforms or people to support these things. But then again, there's companies that obviously perfected these things with platforms. So I think Lunga spoke about Zoho, and I'll give you a practical example of a customer, because in my business, I meet customers on a daily basis. It's part of our jobs. We service the small, medium business segment. So we met a customer, and this guy's got, I think, the most amazing product. We met with him just to get an understanding of his business, and he says, look, because we were essentially talking to him about connectivity. Having that conversation with the customer, we realized that he doesn't necessarily have the best, IT, people at his disposal. Over and above that, he's doing everything else except focusing on what's his core business. We offered Zoho to him, and obviously with some connectivity products as well that we provide to him. We met him around a year and a half later, and his business, obviously expanded. And the reason why was he leveraged off a platform that gave him the ability, not to invest in those things from a physical person. And it gave him the ability to start better managing his business and focus on the key areas that he wanted to focus on. Companies like Telkom, remember, we are corporate. Part of our jobs to service our SMMEs is to ensure that we get the best products and service to make their lives simpler, better, faster, and easier. So essentially what we go and do on behalf of our SMMEs and on behalf of our end users is we go with our muscle and negotiate specific products, services, platforms, innovations, technology, and drive that cost down so we can break it up and make it much more simpler to, or cheaper, and, affordable to the end user. So we have the scale and capacity to do that and invest in those type of things.
So you're bringing down the barriers of entry.
100%.
Especially from a cost point of view.
Because that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah. Okay, Sebo. And you wanted to talk about the free trade thing, right?
Yeah.
So I have a different question, and you can bring in the free trade into your answer.
Okay.
I feel that all tech talk and almost product and service I see seems to be parachuted from elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
Are we Africanizing tech so that it speaks to everybody else? Are we creating a Deliware instead of a Zoro? A Mopeme instead of a SEP? And this is a very serious question.
Yeah.
Are we speaking not only from a language point of view, but from a product point of view? Are we Africanizing tech?
Yes. Okay, yeah, that's a very interesting question. I remember in August, I got an opportunity to attend the youth symposium on the EFTA. When we were there, we were with the Secretary General, His Excellency Wamkele Mene, where we discussed some of the critical issues in terms of innovation, especially in the African context. I got an opportunity to meet a few young people in the region that were doing something very quite excellent in terms of innovation and also adapting businesses that are more relevant. I think the most critical issues, especially from an African context, is that how do we develop technologies that are more Africanized, that a person in every marginalized communities can use. So in Africa, I always say we have problems, and where we have problems, there's more opportunities. And one thing that I've noticed is that if we can utilize technology in a way that can address the day-to-day problems, that can also be a quite more progressive. One day when I attended a conference called GovTech, I met a young man who introduced, by the way, I'm also a young man.
I was about to say.
I met a gentleman that produced a device that monitors taxi owners. So you see in a taxi, when you enter in a taxi, there is a camera. It monitors everything that has to do with, when you enter. It also has a payment system for those that does not like carrying cash. Yeah. It also helps the taxi owner to understand what the taxi driver is doing. For instance, if the taxi driver decides to off-ramp to take another route. So it's those kind of technologies that are more localized. Because if I buy taxis and I hire my cousin or anyone, and that person, I still have to pay, I still have to pay that for that taxi, but that person is not really taking care of my taxi. But in that essence, it gives the taxi owner more leverage in understanding what that taxi driver is doing on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And that's technology that is more embedded. It deals with the day-to-day issues of a business owner that wants to control and also to leverage on the finances.
And most importantly, does not need the taxi driver to have a matric. Yes. Technology that they can use on a daily basis.
Yeah, that can use. It just needs a smartphone, yes. Which most people now are able to use a smartphone. So when we look at tech, so tech has to address my day-to-day problems. Because if I wake up today, the challenges that I have as an African and the challenges that a European person has, they're quite different. So when we look at, for the SMEs, when we look at problems in an African context, how do we design solutions that can solve my problems and your problems? And I think that has been the innovation dilemma, where we now have problems that in most cases people are not able to address. I'd give just a perfect example. In the previous time, there was challenges with Uber. People were driving the taxis, meter taxis. I'll call them meter taxis for lack of a better word. But what I've seen is that there is a guy that came up with an app that addresses that issue. Now meter taxis can now utilize an app. Yeah. Because when I come from the airport, there is a meter taxi, there's an Uber. But what gives Uber the advantage is the app. I can take that app, send a location to my wife, for instance. Yeah. But with a meter taxi, it's just a mutual conversation. But now someone has said, okay, there is a gap. How can I solve that gap? So I think when we design technologies, let's look at the day-to-day problems.
Okay. Asked and answered.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. And yes, we don't have to use the knob gear to solve.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now, Hepsi, you have messed up with the corporates, right? You have taken them off their comfort zones and you've said to them, stop that nonsense that says that these guys don't exist. They do exist. You're actually not doing your part. The flip side, though, and it's a fair criticism, I want to say, that you then find a lot of SMEs don't get themselves market ready. They don't improve themselves, they don't get tech savvy, and they lose out on opportunities. How do we bridge that gap so that we can't then only blame the corporates for not playing the game when we're not upping ours?
Yes. So that was actually a resounding problem that corporates were facing, is that there are opportunities, but small businesses don't meet their end of the stick. So like I've mentioned, that what we did with the platform was to grade small businesses, as I've mentioned, from blue to platinum. And every time an SME is graded, they get a sense of what the gaps are that they must solve before they become visible to opportunities, which are only at platinum level, by the way. So that growth plan allows them at their own pace to fix whatever the requirements are, whether it's a compliance issue, whether it's a system and processes. They will know what that issue is, and then they need to work towards reaching our platinum. So that's how we've manage that problem that they've raised to us. But still doesn't take away from the fact that now we have a lot of platinum SMMEs who can execute without any issues. What are you then doing as corporates? I want to go back to the question that you're asking because I liked it around.
You like the question? I like it. Thank you very much.
I like that question very much. There's an issue around. There's a perception that global systems, or corporates prefer global systems, but these systems don't cater for local needs.
100%.
The reason why linkage exists is because we realize that Cooper, SAP, Oracle, none of those, they're actually a barrier to entry for small business in a corporate because very difficult to navigate. So a corporate will tell you, well, you must be on SAP or you must be on Cooper. That is such a difficult thing to navigate. And yet those systems don't cater for the local requirements that allow these corporates to have a license to trade. What are you doing locally? So therefore localize your solutions. So when a corporate has those systems, we're saying to them, you can use your global systems, but start consuming local systems as well because they're very clever entrepreneurs who've come up with solutions that really work for our local context and environment. I'm part of this, DIT, Duckies in Tech. I've come across a lot of other startups or other tech startups who have built incredible solutions. There's one, we use Zoho as well, but there's a lady within that group that has exceptional productivity tools that can be used by small businesses in South Africa, built in South Africa. And we keep forgetting that, these subscription fees with the exchange rate, you might think that Zoho is cheap now. Yes, I agree it is at this point in time. But the exchange rate gets us in the long term. Because you think it's $20, and then the next time the rand is 100, and then of course you can't afford it anymore. Whereas if you look locally, I'm sure the pricing will be, beneficial for us. So I do believe that we need to start looking at empowering local tech companies. Having built Linkage, we then moved on to become an AWS advanced partner, meaning that we can build solutions as well. We provide cloud readiness, we do architecture reviews, all of that work. When I hear Lunga saying that they are in India building, and I ask myself, well, where was this RFP? Because we could have also responded.
It will change after today. Yeah.
So I'm really, really keen to engage him on that in particular, that there are a lot of software development companies locally that are empowering young people with skills and creating jobs here in South Africa. Can you empower us with contracts to then continue to maintain those jobs?
So there is a gentleman in this room. He has developed his own smartwatch, right? CRT sits there, the back there. And by the way, with the help of Telkom, that they've developed the smartwatch. Big up Telkom. However, tech develops so quickly that tomorrow his watch could be behind the times. As I'm taking my jog, it could be telling me that I'm running backwards. How do we make sure that not only does he develop this thing, but he's got software development technology that keeps him up to date so that he competes, with Samsung that I'm wearing now. And I'm asking you, not because you're from Telkom, I'm asking you, how do we keep SMEs up to speed with tech as it develops day after day after day?
Yeah, so I think it's quite important. Again, as I said, information is out there. People obviously, I think as business leaders, as SMEs, one of the things that you saw that South Africans are mostly on the internet. Question is, what are we using that time for? Are we spending that 11 hours a day on a social media platform? How do we split the time up? Are we empowering ourselves with knowledge on how tech is advancing? Because as much as telcos, as businesses, that enables tech, as much as we put in those things to make people aware from a marketing perspective, from an awareness perspective, from a session like today, what are we as entrepreneurs doing to empower ourselves with that information that we have out there? But I mean, you know, if I really have to look into, I mean, the question that you asked in terms of making it relevant, you know, to that question, I think the most important thing is just engaging, you know, with our customers, engaging with our SMMEs, and most importantly, I think for the for the business owner, is not only the partner that he chooses to know that you know, they're choosing a partner that's you know, always keeping them abreast, always updating the tech. You know, there's always better services and solutions out there. So that speaks to the partnership side of things, you know. And coming back to what you were speaking about, you know, I think it's very, very relevant that we start localizing some of these techs that we start bringing on board. And the reason for that is because there's an analogy, there's a scenario that I want to paint very quickly. So there's a big company, I'm not going to name the name. They looked at the HR process, and part of the HR process was the first step in terms of you know, sifting through CVs and getting potential you know, people, and not having the right intelligence into the system. They were actually looking for a tech individual, right? So what happened is, when they brought in all these CVs, they used information from far as back as 15 years ago. And then we knew that 15 years ago, a lot of men was dominating the tech space. So essentially what happened there was, when they started sifting to the CVs, they found that, you know what, we're picking up people now, and the system has given us people that are more, from a gender-based perspective, it was more men. You know, what happened to the females? But we know there's both men and females that are extremely excellent in tech right now. So also choosing the right software, the right partners, and the right technologies, and localizing it as well to your market is quite important. So,
funny coming from a man who kept on saying, don't ask me too many questions, and, you know, I don't like talking, and he speaks longer than anybody else. So it's question time. We got 12 minutes, unfortunately, for questions. And as you prepare for your questions, we've got one coming up here. The mic is coming. I want to read one that we got online. Well, at least online. It's from Eneka Ndlovu. And if I don't pronounce your name well, Eneka, please forgive me. He says, or she says, they say, being a BTT, born before technology, AI, robot, 4IR, how does one adapt to all of these scary words? And second question, I like one question per person, but I'll ask it anyway. The Udemy online courses, are they legit for one to enroll? So I'm going to ask one of you to answer the first question, and then somebody else to answer the second. You pick whichever, any one of you. I'm not going to pick on you.
I'll take the Udemy one.
Yeah.
It's a verified platform.
Yeah.
But also anything like YouTube. There are not people awarding certifications on YouTube, but that content and that learning material that you're getting is from the best industry experts available. Yeah. So I think you should just throw yourself in all of that and not do one and do multiple. That's really where you'll build your competencies.
I think the first question was answered. I asked that question myself, so we go.
Hi everyone. Hello, panel. My name is Mpilo Zondi from One Nation Youth Development. Basically, just to brief you guys, we're trying to bring forward the knowledge of the jobs that, like FIR, the jobs that necessarily, like, people who come from the townships don't know about, like stuff that we're talking about here. We do content, we do videos. We did like season 1 of Career Corner. We want to do season 2. My question is for the panel, the people who are here. How do we get a hold of you guys? Because the problem that we're having with stuff like us, like, I want to know, like this beautiful gentleman, this one here.
His name is
I want to know your story. I want to know how you got to where you are. Like, there's a kid right now who's sitting somewhere in a township high school who wants to understand. So this gentleman here was well fed. The problem is when we email, like, let's say Telkom, or people like your organizations, it's send an email. When you send an email, nothing happens. And I would love to have an interview with all of you just to understand how you got to where you are, because for me it's very interesting. A guy who looks like me is sitting in a panel addressing us. There's kids in school who love to hear what you have to say. But now the thing is, you don't have time to address all the kids in the country. We already do that on our own thing, but I don't know how to get a hold of people who can help us grow what we're trying to grow. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have, I suspect you have DSTV at home? You don't? Well, you can catch it on the internet too. But you can live stream it. So if you go to channel 412 on DSTV, there's a channel called Business Day TV. These guys and many of their sort are always there. And we talk to them about these things. So also get the children to watch because they learn a lot. But yes, you must access them. I'm not dismissing what you're saying. But do get into other platforms that give you that information, right? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm excited that there are, oh, I was about to say there are no more questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Tegwani. I'm the founder of Unfiltered Media House. We are in the media, marketing, and communications space. My question for you guys is, how businesses based in areas that lack the infrastructure that enables them to participate in the digital transformation survive the rapid fourth industrial revolution, like areas like Loli, for example, that are like far out there, but like are wanting to participate and are clearly not wanting to get left behind. Thank you.
Thank you for using Loli as an example, not Kimberly. My guest would not have been happy. But I think that question is up yours. Yeah. Where you work, a majority of people have no access to facilities, to infrastructure, to stuff. How do they access OIR and technologies to become better at what they do?
Yeah, so I think in most cases, one of the challenges that we've met, especially in the Southern African region, is that our advice to governments, especially the regional economic communities, is that when we talk about 4IR, it is quite important that governments has a part to play, because if we can create a partnership between the private sector and also the government, there are some roles where the private sector can play, but those roles sometimes are limited. When you talk about infrastructure, how does government come into play to make sure that a rural place in Limpopo has access to the internet? We have these ISPs, they go to the rural areas, they put, networks, but, sometimes those networks are vandalized. How does the government sector come into play to ensure that they protect also the infrastructure? So until we find a common denominator between, or a common relationship or collaboration between the government and also the private sector, most of these issues are still going to be lacking. So in one of the most important things that I also reiterate is that, we live in an age where technology is democratized. And one of the most important skills is having tools to relearn, to unlearn, and also to skill up. So we live in an age where it is quite important for any business or for any entrepreneur that wants to advance their technological skills to keep learning. So I myself, I believe that the knowledge that I have today, tomorrow, it's no longer relevant.
And that's up your street, right, Kolo? Not only because you would relate to a town outside the big CBDs, right? You know what happens there, but also because you're in the space of recruiting people with skills who need to reskill themselves all the time. Do we have, in your portfolio, do you see that you're getting more people into spaces who come from where I come from, which is urban Johannesburg, as opposed to Kimberley? And how are we bridging that gap?
Yes, I do think so. But I think the first thing to notice is that people from the small towns are coming to places like Johannesburg and Cape Town. There's that, I don't know what kind of migration process that is. So that is happening. But the key thing for me that's really interesting to see is that that talent is just as excellent as the talent that comes from Joburg. So that means people are already finding in their own scenarios, in their own local contexts, ways to upskill themselves, ways to learn. I don't know whether that's at a library or whether that's just at a community center or a talent acceleration hub, but there's a lot of work being done by ecosystem players, incubators, accelerators, who are creating these kinds of resources that young people can access, so that when they come to a place like Joburg because they believe the jobs are here, they can be competitive in the market. But I think another thing I'd add is that I think our employers and our corporates and our enterprises, although it is a trend right now, this thing of the future of work and remote work, it's not really being adopted as widely as you would see, because you would actually see a lot more enterprises actually saying, you don't have to be in Joburg for this role. You can stay where you are, you can work remotely. But I think that there's a little bit of remote work readiness that also has to be undertaken not only by talent, but also by organizations and employers. Because the way you monitor your staff, the way you make sure the work is being done correctly, it's a completely different way of working to the past. And I think employers also have to take that step and say, look, if we're going to be competitive, if we're going to attract top talent, how do we kind of bring in the benefits that enable online, remote work, hybrid working environments? So I think
is it because, Hepsi, that the people in leadership are left behind by this technology that's happening already, right? I mean, I could have been a manager for the last 30 years, and now I'm asked not to put bumps on the seats and remote control people from wherever they are in with their generators. Could that be a real issue?
I totally agree with that sentiment that I think the people who are put in positions to support small businesses or just employees, themselves need to upskill themselves around digital transformation and what that actually means in reality. One of the things that we've seen with one of the clients that we have on Linkage, he has about 12,000 SMMEs on Linkage. What we realize is that it's the part of skilling themselves and their SMMEs is around looking at putting together, conferences and as well as I would say maybe a skills program around cybersecurity. And what we realized with one of our clients when we put that conference together, they themselves as employees were talking about how much they've learned from that. Although it was geared towards the small businesses that were, it was catered for. So I think constant upskilling is important. I don't come from a tech space. I use my industry knowledge to identify the gaps and close them with technology. And I think anyone can do that. And we're all constantly upskilling ourselves around that.
So, if in the absence of any other question, I'm going to ask you to be very brief, the both of you. I'm actually completely out of time.
Hi, yeah, just very quickly. I just wanted to I'll pose this one to Telkom.
Save the best for last.
Yeah, I mean, government is still using Z83s to recruit. What role are you playing? I don't know if my information is outdated, but I understand that Telkom is a private public. You still have government as part shareholder. So what role are you playing to really influence for them to say, please, we understand we come from Stone Age, but can we move with the times? I was just telling Kulile that we are now, the world is talking about 5IR, and we are still lagging behind. We haven't caught up as South Africa onto 4IR as yet. Thank you.
Please pass the mic over to her quickly. We get the second question and the final question.
Good day. Lunga Smith from Medsol Consulting. Just a quick one. Government has UPG online if you want to apply. Each province has an online.
Thank you for answering that question.
I mean, it's not a question, but it's just to add on. Since we're imparting knowledge, if you want to keep abreast of industry knowledge, you can do a 4IR course at UJ. I'm UJ alumni, but this is not advertising or marketing on behalf of them. But they offer a free course for 4IR for free, and they teach you on artificial intelligence and all the things that we discussed today. I think the doctor from UJ, from JBS, is gone. But yeah,
what's your name again?
Lunga Smith.
Thank you so much, because I have another question from Mabel here, which you just answered. She says, are there workshops and or training for the active elderly SMEs to be able to adapt to the technology? Thank you very much. I was going to throw it at them. Yeah. So, in 10 seconds each, right? Why should people work with your organization, Hepsi? And I'm counting 10 seconds.
Okay. Scenario is here that you run a mining company. The locals are upset about not understanding what are you providing for them. They close the gate to your mine, and they want to tell the story. How have you empowered us here? Come to Linkage. We can help you solve that problem.
Beautiful. That was quick. Seppo. In the real 10 seconds.
I think for me, if you know you have a business and you want to venture into African markets, I'm your guy.
Okay. I'm going to finish with you. Let's get Kholo to go first.
I think from our side, if you want to work with great talent, experienced professionals, you should definitely reach out to Credible.
Excellent. And Srini, finally, it's yours.
Yeah, I think from our side, look, you've got a trusted partner in Telkom for the last how many years that you guys know. I think most of you guys weren't born by then. So I think we've run this journey for quite a long time. We've entrenched in the South African market and economy. We've built this business up from a fixed line business now to a converged business going into the IT and cloud space. So we believe that we've put in that investment to really empower and support our SMMEs.
Beep, beep. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and thank you to our panelists. I was at this moment supposed to announce the winner of the social media competition, which I won't, because you did not participate. So we are donating this to that guy in India with a generator, and he's gonna use once I get the name, we shall announce it. Please hang around, because the next session is equally very important. But before then, I'd like to thank all our guests today, from the first moment when you got a welcome speech to a guest of what do you call that speech of yours? What is it called? Keynote speech, to the panelists that were here, to all your questions, mostly your participation, both the people in the room and online. Thank you so much for participating. You have now given us an idea of what the second blaze is going to look like. We now know, and thank you to you for doing that for us. Right? Thank you so much. It's been a privilege. We're going to break now. I'm sorry to those of you who are online, because I can't invite you to the cocktail session. But if you are home or somewhere, please have some cocktail on us and enjoy with us. But we're going to go to the cocktail bar, have a light lunch, and network some more, which is most important in what we do. And therefore, from me, Rems Mabote, goodbye and God bless.